Okay, let's talk about our third of the four key elements, the envelopes. Now, the envelopes control other things. They're kind of like automation in a way. So let's focus in on the amplitude envelope to get us started, and then we'll look at the other ones once we understand what an envelope is. Basically, what an envelope does is it opens and it closes, right? Just like if you were opening an envelope and putting a letter in it and then closing it. This is what we used to do before we had email. You had to put things in envelopes. We have 4 parameters on an envelope. Now, if you're looking at a synthesizer and you're saying, I don't see anything called envelope, I don't see anything labeled envelope, here's a key. Look for these 4 letters, A, D, S, R. Look for those. If you see those somewhere, you're looking at an envelope. Okay, that's what that means. ADSR is a parameter. Sometimes in some synthesizers, you might see another one in there too. But the typical normal state is to have an envelope with 4 settings, and they are ADSR. So what do they stand for? Now remember, this is something that just opens and closes. So these 4 letters are the 4 parameters of how it's going to open and close, how fast it's going to open and close. So let's pull these down. Actually, let's leave them up a little bit so I can hear my sound. So there's my sound. I'm going to open this filter up a little bit. Okay, now I've got a nice good sound. I want a sound that has a little bit of sustain so we can really hear this envelope. Now this envelope is we're applying it to the amplitude, or the amplifier, right? So this is going to control how the volume of the oscillator changes over time, or the volume of the synthesizer changes over time. So we're going to shape this sound by adjusting it over time. So let's look at it. So the A stands for attack. So the initial attack, meaning since I'm using a MIDI keyboard, when I push that note down, when I put my finger on the note, how does it attack? Does it attack slow, meaning that it ramps up into its full volume, or fast? So right now, attack is all the way down, which means that when I push my finger on the note, it's going to be all on right away. Right? It's all on. If I crank this up, that means that it's going to take time, a certain amount of time for it to get to its full volume. So now I play the note, and it takes that long to get to its full volume. So it ramps up. So the attack is like, how quickly is it going to fade in? Is it going to open up the volume? Is it going to get to our main level? So now I have a little bit of it, and you can hear it kind of ramp up. Give it a little bit more. So now we've got this kind of slowly opening thing. So I'm going to set it somewhere around here. Okay. Now decay. Now decay is a little bit trickier. Let's imagine an acoustic instrument that we may know. Let's say a crash cymbal. Okay. So you've got a crash cymbal. It's a cymbal on a stand. You're going to hit it with a stick. And you're going to hit it with a wood stick, and it's going to go pow, right? So that first hit, like right when you hit it, is going to be the attack, right? So the attack in a crash cymbal is going to be like that, right? It's full blast. As soon as you hit it, that thing is on. And then there's an initial sound, there's an initial decay, and that is the ending of our stick hitting the cymbal, right? So it's this loud burst of sound, and then it goes down fairly quickly in a crash cymbal to just this resonating of the cymbal. That resonating of the cymbal, the stuff, is the sustain, is the S. Okay? So the D is how quickly does it go down from its initial burst into the sustain. Okay? So we have our initial attack. This is where I hit that cymbal with a stick. The decay is how long does it take to get down to that point where it's just ringing, right? And that's the sustain, is the ringing. Okay? So in a synthesizer like this, we might have, let's put our attack there, and then we say the decay, let's make the decay really short. Okay, and I'll crank this up a little bit. Actually, let's make the attack a little bit longer. So what we're going to hear here is the attack is going to take, maybe like a second or so to get to the full volume, and then very quickly it's going to pull down to its sustaining volume. Right? Let's turn this attack up a little bit longer so you can hear that. Okay, so it gets to its full volume and it goes bam, and it locks down really quick to its sustaining volume. That quick ramp down to its sustaining volume is controlled with this. So if I want to make that a little more elegant, I would turn that up. Now we're going to hear it grow to its full volume and then pull back to its sustaining volume. Okay, it still is fairly quick with that setting, so we could turn it up more. So that's the decay. The sustain is what is happening as long as my finger is down on the pitch or the note is on with whatever MIDI device you're using to control your notes. The sustain is where it's going to sit. So these, attack and decay, are a function of time. How long will something happen? Sustain is kind of a volume meter, actually. If we want the sustain to be really high, we'd set it up there. So now we're at our sustaining volume and it's pretty loud, as long as I'm holding my finger down. Now we're at our sustaining volume and it's really quiet, right? So I can turn it up. So that's after the attack, after the decay, where it just sits. After its initial attack and decay, where is it just going to sit and hang out as long as I have my finger on it? So that's where we set that. So this is the kind of weird one of the ADSR envelope. And R, if you think about it, you might be able to guess what R stands for. It stands for release. Release is what happens when I lift my finger up. So if it's all the way down, let's turn our sustain volume up a little bit. Okay, R is all the way down. That means when I let my finger go, it stops suddenly. Let's give R a little bit of time, because R is a time function. Let's put it about halfway up. Now when I let go, it's going to take some time before it goes all the way back down to 0 with its volume, right? So I'm going to tell you exactly when I lift my finger, since you can't see it. Okay, my finger's down. Now I'm going to lift it up right now. Right? So it took some time for it to get down to its ending volume, back to 0. If I crank this way up, I'm letting go right now. Takes a good amount of time. Right, so that means if you were creating something like a pad, which we'll do here shortly, a pad is a sound that it's very washy sound. You're going to want a slow attack, a slow release, maybe not that slow, and something about like that actually. So it's going to ramp up, it's going to fade out, so it's going to fade in, fade out. Let go and it goes away, right? So that's how you would make that kind of sound. So these envelopes really help us sculpt the sound into exactly what we want. So let me get this set back to something a little more normal here. Okay, now let's move on and look at one of our other envelopes. So now that we know how envelopes work, the filter envelope is going to control our filter, right? So it's going to be, how does that filter evolve over time? It opens and closes is what we're going to do. So we're going to say, let that filter open up slowly, right? So basically, it's going to pull it kind of, based on the representation we have here, it's actually going to pull it kind of down. And you're not going to see that happen, but it's going to be happening in the back end. So let's do the attack, decay, sustain. Where does it sit? And then the release, we'll have it go back up. Now the release isn't going to really, we're not going to hear the release here, because the amplitude envelope, the release is all the way down. So the sound is going to be off while this is still pulling our filter out. So let's pull this up. Let's just see what happens. So the release happened as the volume faded down, so we didn't hear it all that much. But you could hear the attack, right? That buzzy, swooping up sound was this attack. It was the filter opening up right? So you can hear it moving by what we've specified here with the envelope. It's kind of fun. All right, and then the last one that we have here in Subtractor is the modulation envelope. Modulation is a general term. So what this one means is that we can modulate a number of things, and they are listed over here. We can either click on them or we can use this destination to cycle through them. So oscillator 1, oscillator 2, mix, FM, phase, or frequency 2. So let's set it to oscillator 1. So I believe this is going to be the pitch of oscillator 1. So that means if I pull this up, it's going to ramp up. And then we need to give it an amount here to really hear it. So let's just really push it up. Set to oscillator 1. Here we go. So you heard it go, the envelope, the attack opened up, and then it went down to its sustain, which was like all the way down again. So it kind of ramps down. Goes, sounds like someone shifting gears. Let's do it on a low note. See, that's kind of cool because, and we hear two frequencies, right? We hear one that's unaffected because that's our oscillator 2. Our oscillator 2 is unaffected. Only oscillator 1 is getting this ramp. And it's pretty extreme. If we want to do something a little more subtle, we might do this. Right? So now you don't hear the ramping up so much. You just hear a bit more of a complicated sound. And we can adjust which one of these the modulation envelope affects. So this is kind of a programmable envelope. You can have it do a whole bunch of different things. Okay, great. So that's envelope. The key thing to remember with envelopes are the ADSR: attack, decay, sustain, and release. And if you want to take it one step further, remember that attack, decay, and release are percentages of what we're going after, our time, right? And sustain functions more like a normal volume in amplitude, a more, let's not call it volume because that's only true when we're looking at an amplitude envelope. An amount, right? An amount parameter is what the sustain would actually be reflecting. How much of that parameter do we want while we're sustaining? Okay, so that's envelopes. Okay, next let's look at the amplifier, the most simple of all of them. This will be a snap.